If you have around 1.6, 1.7 million shillings and you want to purchase a sedan, most probably you could be looking at the Nissan Sylphy B17. Welcome back to 0 to 60 Motoring. Once again, my name is Bill Turi, and today I want to tell you quite a number of things about this Nissan Sylphy B17. Remember, 0 to 60 Motoring is that platform that makes your car ownership journey easy. If you want to purchase a car, you can check our TikTok page, Instagram, Facebook and YouTube for car reviews. If you miss a review, you can always shoot us a message on the number below and we're going to make your car ownership journey easy. If you want to purchase a car, you can always task us to get a clean car for you. First things first, let's start with the design of this Nissan Sylphy B17. How does it look like? Now, when I'm looking at this car compared to the predecessor, the G11 variation, I find that this one has a more appealing look, or let me say fresher look. Look at this face up front here. The lights here actually have this daytime running light down here, which actually gives this car some sharper detail. You have this chrome finish and this grille here, which actually I'll say that makes this car more appealing. And when you're looking at the side profile of this car, it comes with these lines here, or curves, which actually give this car some curvatures or some good look. Basically, this car sits on these are 16-inch rims. Of course, for the higher trim, something like an S Touring, you may find them with 17-inch rims. Now, on the rear side of this Sylphy, this is what it looks like. On the rear side, there is nothing much to say about this car, but honestly, I think Nissan did a good job when crafting or in this generation of the B17. The 2016-2017 Nissan Sylphy B17, the most common engine variation if you are getting your car as an ex-Japan unit, will be this 1.8 liter naturally aspirated petrol engine. This engine makes around 130 brake horsepower and around 180 Newton meters of torque. That power is sent to the front wheels only via an extronic continuous variable transmission. So if you are, most probably you'll be getting your unit from Japan, the most common engine in this Nissan Sylphy B17 will be this 1.8 liter naturally aspirated engine. In some other markets, you can also find the Nissan Sylphy with a 1.6 liter, but my experience with that 1.6 liter is not that much. So in case I say something about it, you should take it with a pinch of salt. Now let's talk something about the performance or the driving dynamics of this Nissan Sylphy B17. Now, what I really like about this car is that it's a comfortable car to ride in. When you are on this driver's seat, the seat is extremely comfortable, and the view of the road is actually pretty okay. The CVT here actually does a very good job. The transitions are actually very smooth, and the 1.8 liter actually feels lively. I'm now doing this is 100 kilometers per hour, and what I like about this car is that the insulation of road noise actually looks pretty good. There is not much of road noise that is encroaching the cabin. In a flat surface like this one, I'm doing this 100 kilometers per hour with a rev of this is actually 1600 RPMs, which actually means that which actually validates why this car is actually very fuel efficient. Of course, when you're going uphill, you'll have to bury your foot a little bit deeper, which will of course mean the car will be a little bit louder. But of course, when you're going uphill, of course, in any car, you are stressing it. So in terms of driving, in terms of handling on the highway, this car feels actually lively. And when I'm comparing this car to the previous generation, that is the G11, this one feels lighter, and in some way it feels actually more agile and smoother, because the gearbox here is actually, the extronic gearbox here is different from the CVT in that one, and it has been tuned better, of course, for drivability and most importantly fuel economy. And the engine here also feels very somewhat smooth, and the vibrations are actually minimal. They don't encroach the cabin that much. From experience, if you want your CVT gearbox to last for a longer time, it's good to leave it maybe to do the transitions or to do the changes on its own, because if you are an aggressive driver, the CVT will still respond, although it may become a little bit loud. But the biggest liability of driving a CVT gearbox aggressively is that it easily kills it or shortens its lifespan. So the best way to maintain your gearbox is by actually leaving the gearbox to do its job. In case maybe you want to go above the speed limits, for instance, now I'm doing this 110. The speed limit here is actually 110, 120. Let me just keep it 110. At 110 kilometers per hour, the car still feels solid on the road. And one thing I like about this car is that the braking system feels good, because if you want to kill the momentum, if you want maybe to come to a stop, or maybe someone ahead of you brake checks you, it's actually easy killing the momentum. And the reason is pretty simple. It's because in this car you are having disc brakes at the front and at the back. That is something that people with Allions and Premiums may not know, because in Premiums and Allions you have drum brakes at the rear and disc brakes at the front. Now let's talk something about the fuel numbers of this Nissan Sylphy B17. Now, if you'll be driving in a town or where there is lots of traffic, and maybe you have a heavy foot, most probably your figures will be around 12.5 to 13 kilometers per liter. That is in city traffic. But should you go to the highway and maybe you don't overload your car, on the highway this CVT does a very good job, and you can actually see the north of 13.5 kilometers per liter. That is on the highway. But of course, fuel numbers also boil down to how you drive, the load you have, and the mechanical health of the car. But those are the fuel numbers that you should be seeing with this Nissan Sylphy B17 1.8 liter. So, is the Nissan Sylphy reliable? Most probably, if you go online and maybe you tell someone that you want to purchase a Nissan, or maybe you say a Nissan Sylphy, many people will be discouraging you from purchasing a Nissan. It's because when I'm looking at the previous generation, that is the G11, they used to have problems with overheating of the engine, and sometimes the gearbox would actually misbehave. In my earlier days of scouting cars, the Nissan Sylphy is one of the cars I scouted. This is a B17. It was a 2013 unit, which actually came with 97,000 kilometers, and the car is currently sitting at 168,000 kilometers. So 69 kilometers down the line, the car is still okay, and it has never skipped a bit. Now, let me tell you quite a number of things about this car here in terms of reliability. Now, in terms of the engine reliability, I don't have a problem whatsoever with this 1.8 liter here. With just a routine maintenance, oil filter, air filter, it should not skip a bit. Now, the biggest headache when it comes to Nissan is the gearbox. Now, from my standpoint, this generation B17 Nissan Sylphy, the gearbox here actually is pretty okay. The reason I'm saying that is because I've seen units with very high mileages and they're actually operating pretty well. The biggest problem people do when it comes to maintenance of these electronic gearboxes is that in most cases they don't get the right CVT fluids. So maybe if your gearbox, maybe you want to service it, the first hack is getting the right gearbox fluid. Now, for this car, the right gearbox fluid should be NS3, and to avoid purchasing a fake gearbox fluid, from my standpoint, I normally advise people to actually go to the official dealership and get the fluid there. That way you minimize chances of purchasing something that is not good, because the easiest way of killing your gearbox is actually using a wrong CVT fluid. Someone may also be asking if it's necessary installing a CVT cooler here, because that is a solution to the previous generation of the Nissan. It has been applied in the X-Trails, some G11 variations, which actually had problems with the gearbox. Now, I've played with the 3 Nissan Sylphy cars that were ex-Singapore, and 2 of them had that CVT cooler installed on them. Now, a CVT cooler, of course, it's going to ensure that your gearbox remains at optimum temperatures at all times. But if you are not an aggressive driver, I don't think it's really necessary installing that CVT cooler unless and otherwise the car came with it. Because from my standpoint, just normal driving and loading your car sensibly, these are CVT should be able to withstand that load or that driving. But should you think that maybe you want extreme performance or you are an aggressive driver, then maybe that may validate the need of installing a CVT cooler. But from my standpoint, for just a normal driving, you load the car properly, you don't overload it, and you are not gunning it that much, I don't think it's really necessary installing that CVT cooler. But if your car came with a CVT cooler already installed, then of course that is some good luck. Now, I've talked about the engine and the gearbox. Another thing that actually is normally a problem with Nissans, but I've not experienced it with this one that much, is that these cars sometimes may have a problem of maybe chewing or finishing their bushes quite fast. But that one also depends on where you drive the car. Because if you ask me, if you frequent rough roads, regardless of the model you use, of course you're going to replace the bushes more frequently, of course. But if you use the car on good roads, I don't think there is going to be a problem with your bushes. So assuming you own this Nissan Sylphy B17 and maybe your gearbox has gone wrong, what is the solution? I normally advise that if a CVT gearbox gets spoiled, my recommendation is that it's good replacing it and not repairing it. Of course, you may repair it, but it may not work well in the long term, because these things are, from my standpoint, CVT gearboxes are a little bit delicate. They are not like a conventional automatic gearbox. So the best way of dealing with a spoiled gearbox, especially when I'm looking at the electronic ones, is actually replacement and not repairing. Because even if you repair, eventually you'll have to replace it. Let's talk something about the interior crafting of this Nissan Sylphy B17. Now, one thing I've really liked about this Nissan Sylphy, it's not that it brings much to the table in terms of the features, but when I'm looking at the build quality of this dashboard compared to the G11, I think that Nissan tried, or they put in some good work here. The reason is, in the previous generation G11, the dashboard actually used to age in a very bad manner. It used to wear out very badly, and you could see the signs of cracking or some distortion, especially if you park your car in the sun for long. In terms of features, you can see this car comes with an eco mode, of course, to improve your fuel numbers. You have a traction control button here. You have parking sensors, which actually come in handy, especially when you are parking at tight spots. The infotainment system here also comes with a reverse camera, of course, to help you when you're reversing. You have an auxiliary port here, and you have something that looks like a wooden finish on this center console here and on the doors. And honestly, in terms of the styling, it may not bring much on the table in terms of features, but I really like the improvement that has gone into this car. And of course, this car has a push to start system. You can actually start it this way. And when you're looking at these gauges here, the cluster actually looks like it has some good quality. Now, in terms of accommodation or space, this is how it looks like. You have some good headroom here. The knee room is pretty okay, because you can adjust the seat backwards. So in terms of the seating, I don't think that the driver or the co-driver are going to have problems in terms of accommodation. Now, this is how the second row seat of this Nissan Sylphy looks like, and you can actually tell that the amount of headroom is good, and I like the comfort levels of these seats. The car is actually very accommodative, let me put it that way. And I think that is one of the reasons that may propel someone into getting this car. So in terms of accommodation, this is how the car looks like, and I think the boot is actually very good. When you're looking at the space, this one will swallow your briefcases with ease. And another thing you may also want to learn about this car is that it comes with a spare wheel down here, which actually these days is becoming quite rare. These days you're actually getting a repair kit. So in terms of accommodation, when you're looking at the front seats, the second row seats, and the boot, I think the Nissan Sylphy actually brings so much more to the table in terms of accommodation, and it could be one of the reasons why someone may be preferring this Nissan Sylphy over the alternatives. So, is the Nissan Sylphy value for money? I want us to approach this one with an open mind. The nearest option to this car, actually the right competitor to this car, is called the Toyota Allion. A 2016 or 2017 Toyota Allion A18 or something like a Premium X package, which utilizes a 1.8 liter 2ZR, a good grade unit will cost around 2.5 million shillings. And a high grade Nissan Sylphy will cost 1.8 million shillings. So when you're looking at that price difference, there is around 700,000 shillings in terms of the price difference. Now, this car brings much more to the table than what an Allion brings. Why am I saying so? This car is more spacious in the interior. This car has better road dynamics than an Allion, doing the job better at around 700,000 shillings cheaper. Then it means that this car is going to represent better value for money. Now, when I'm at other cars that you can get at 1.6 million shillings, most probably when you look at Toyota, the nearest car at 1.6, 1.7 will be a Toyota Axio, if it's a sedan, which of course is a smaller car than this one, and this car will beat an Axio on all rounds. Another car maybe you may get if you're looking at something like Honda, definitely at 1.6 million shillings you're going to get a Honda Grace. A Honda Grace is a sweet car in terms of reliability and fuel efficiency, but it's small and it's not as comfortable as this one. So that leaves me with the option of a Nissan Sylphy if someone is looking for a foreign used car and their budget is a maximum of 1.6, 1.7 shillings. So you can now see why I'm saying that this car tags along a very good value for money proposition, if you ask me. I think I've tried to cover literally everything that maybe you may be interested in learning about if you want to purchase a Nissan Sylphy. So from my standpoint, if you want to buy a Nissan Sylphy and maybe it's a new one, if you do your pre-purchase inspection well, you should not be having a problem. But if you want to purchase a local used Nissan Sylphy, I'll say that you should pay great attention to the gearbox, because that is the greatest thing that can go wrong, or something that maybe can break your bank. So I think that is enough for today, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.